saying we're being have, not behaving, which is really funny. We're being have.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the design review meeting. It's May 12th. My name is Amy Paretsky. I'm the chairman of the design review committee. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of June 16th, 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures. All members of the design review committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the design review committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. This meeting will not feature public comment. I will now confirm member access to the meeting. Daria? You're muted.
Yep, here.
Yep, Dave, Farron?
Here.
Lisa Maselli?
I'm here.
And staff? Lori Connors?
Here.
Okay. Let's see. Meeting ground rules. Actually, since we have no public comment today, we don't really need the meeting ground rules. It is now 8:33. And the first thing on the agenda is back to talking about our two-family guidelines. Sorry.
Are we all talking at once?
No, I didn't know. Lori, did you want to bring it up since you had the clean copy, or do you want me to bring it up? I have it up too.
I can bring it up. I actually have on my screen the one with the changes still in the text, because that's kind of where we left off. So is it okay if I bring up that one, or do you want me to bring up the clean copy one?
Probably the one with the changes, I guess.
Okay. All right. So just bear with me a minute.
And I did notice there were some changes on the first page. I think, or I don't think we went over that last time. Is it what you and Bob had discussed?
Yes.
So maybe we'll start
No,
there.
that isn't it. Sorry about that. Let's try that again.
Do you want to go through the minutes, Amy, or no?
Well, since she pulled it up, we can do it after. Sorry.
Okay. All right, no problem. I just didn't see them on the list. Oh, no, there they are. Consideration minutes.
I don't know what I did. I apparently shared the wrong thing. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
And are you, well, which one are you seeing? Are you seeing?
House.
these?
A house and a roof plan.
Oh, okay, good. All right, I have two screens, so I wasn't sure which screen you were looking at, so that's good. All right, so Bob Frederico is here, so he can kind of fill in the blanks if you have any questions. But on the first page, where we were talking originally about modifications to two-family structures, one thing I noticed when Bob and I were talking about this section is that there is absolutely no trigger currently in the zoning bylaws for approval of modifications of two-family homes by the planning board. So because the planning board has no jurisdiction, the design review committee also has no jurisdiction. So if somebody wants to do a modification, an exterior modification, all they have to do is apply for a building permit. So that's So this section, unless we change the zoning bylaws, this section really doesn't apply.
When I first read some of those, I thought maybe it was too much, like, because installing a new porch or deck, would that need? I don't know if that would need to come, design review and then planning board, it seems like a lot. But I don't know, that's just me. I thought at first these were some of the things that wouldn't trigger it.
Well, if you're looking at changing and putting up a porch and that sort of thing, you're changing the outside of the building. You're changing how it looks. And if it's one side, is this for one side? Is this for both sides? One of the things I think I mentioned earlier was that I think that we should, and I don't know if design review does this or planning does this, but create a policy like they do with homeowners for two families, and that they have a certain amount of community together. So whatever the house starts looking like in the beginning, that it should maintain that look throughout its time. So if you were given, now you have two people coming in with two different thought processes, and they start to change one side or the other, how does that affect the other side in the look, in the value, and in the community? So I would think that some of this, it would, I mean, if it was a home and it's just by itself, adding an addition, maybe it wouldn't matter. But I think because you're sharing this as a sense of community, that there has to be some sort of a community agreement of what you're going to do and how it's going to look. Because we've already started to see, I know one two-family in particular on Ridge Road doesn't even, one side is really becoming different than the other side, and the face is straight across. It doesn't have any breakup between putting solar panels on the roof, changing the garage door, whether it has windows or no windows, changing the color of the front door and the garage door, where the other side doesn't have the same configuration, changing the trim colors. I think that all plays into the fact that you have one building that was designed to house two families. So I think that it would be better to have some controls over that for the people who live there, or the other side who may not be able to make those considerations, and then move for this year, since we're going to probably have some new things on zoning, that we should put it in for zoning. And not take.
I'm a little bit concerned about having any government entity have control over the colors that people paint their doors and shutters. I think that's really big brotherish.
If it's for family, you're absolutely right, but we're talking a two-family. You're talking two houses attached together. So it's not like you have that kind of a freedom. I mean, it's certainly a personal preference. I just know that in the neighborhoods where there have been condos, and the condo association, that's where you go before, and the condo association then gets together with the people who make their decisions. I don't think that by us creating some oversight is governmental and overreaching.
My concern is the mechanics of it. When you talk about a condo development, there's some sort of a condo association in which all the residents have a vote. In a 1 and 2 family, we can't force them to do a condo association because we don't get involved with the ownership style or the ownership framework. So, my concern is, if you want to control and have to approve the change of a color of a door, I think that's going to be a tall order to be able to enforce it. In terms of the mechanics and what mechanical document or legal document can be created to achieve what you want to do.
I think the door color is pretty minimal. I don't think the door color is what we're talking about. With this, we're talking about decks and additional existing walls, porches. That's different. I mean, and I've seen it in other towns where they do have that. Shrewsbury has that for two families. They have a small association. Now, again, we're not the legal body to make that, but I think that you start changing things like that, and there should be a little oversight. You're not telling them what to do, but certainly making suggestions, because again, this is not This is not a law. This is a suggestion and a guideline.
Well, you have to remember that a suggestion is useless if somebody doesn't want to agree with it. And there's no enforcement or teeth in the order.
We shouldn't have this at all, Bob.
You know, one thing that could be done is as part of a special permit that the planning board issues when a duplex is originally approved, there could be language placed in there about major modifications to the structure. So if there's a major modification proposed, then it would go back to the planning board for review. We could even specify what those are. But perhaps that would be a better approach. I mean, personally, I don't think it's appropriate for the planning board to get involved in paint colors. That's a personal choice. But, you know, any sort of, you know, major structural change, like if they wanted to enclose a porch or, you know, construct a porch or something like that, that could be tackled as a condition of approval.
I guess I keep going back to Pompanesett, where you only have certain colors you can pick from or you don't build there. I mean, the town really limits it to like 20 colors. They have 2 mailboxes you can pick from, and we're not that town. But it does happen all over the place, and I don't want to tell people you know, colors and stuff, but I think there's something important here, and I think we're missing a big piece. But I do agree with, I would rather say major, you know, modification and obviously or highly visible, you know, from the public, because if you put something in the back of the house and nobody sees it, and we're the design review committee and nobody sees it, it's not the end of the world. Now you could argue, well, what about the neighbor behind them? They just put this big boxing rink, you know, with bright lights, and now they can't sleep at night. You know, there'd be something there that would be, you know, you can always find an exception, but even all those bullets there, the biggest thing that's missing to me, because at one point in time, these were built and people thought they look cool. It would be, to me, worse if you demolished the porch, took out the windows, because now you're really making it look worse as opposed to adding something nice. So I would say something like a major modification. It doesn't have to be an addition, but if they put all these nice porches up and it looks beautiful from the road and someone just wants a flat front and more lawn, that's a big deal. So I think adding additional windows, I'm probably okay with that, but I would not be okay with subtracting all the windows. You know, so I think that's something that when we look at it, I would look at it for bigger pieces, because Lori, I don't want to be God either. I don't want to say it has to be blue and this one has to be green. You know, and our neighborhood has, like, people are trying to be sensitive to these neutral colors, but that's just our neighborhood. And if someone put up a bright yellow one, you know, God bless them, because it doesn't bother me, but it does other people. But I do think the two things that are most important in the guidelines to me would be, you know, highly visible from the public. So, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the town look nice. That's kind of our mission. And it would be a modification, not necessarily an addition. You know, if there's a significant change to what we see, just let us take a peek at it and make sure, you know, it's not ugly. Or to Lisa's point, if I decide to make my side of the duplex 3 stories tall and the other one's only a ranch height, that's kind of awkward too, and a little bit unfair to the guy next door to say, look, I'm rich and you're a nobody. So there's that fairness thing that I think, you know, I don't know that we should regulate, but it in my heart seems unfair. And even if they do that, there's other codes that would kick in that Bob could tell you about. If I added 2 stories to my house and I'm connected to the other guys, well, now we've got drifting loads that someone has to say, hey, they put a wall next to a roof, so now added snow on that roof, can that roof actually hold the weight? So then you have to bring a structural engineer to analyze the building next to it, because it could literally cause a collapse. So anyway, I'm saying I'm not up for, some of the minor paint colors or trim and stuff, but I'm absolutely, if it's something highly visible and it's a major modification, just let us take a peek at it. And I don't like having the control or being big brother, but I think under the really the mission of being fair and trying to keep things look nice, I would limit what we do, but make sure that they're a big deal and we can see them easily, and then we comment. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's appropriate.
I've got a quick question, if I may. Excuse me. You folks have been talking about the building itself, and I know the design review committee gets involved with, the landscape and the layout of the driveway, walkways, things like that. What do you propose to do in the event that somebody wants to put a pool in the backyard, or an accessory structure, or a fence that's over 7 feet? How do you, or somebody wants to put in a rock garden with a water feature or something like that? At what extent do you want to have a say on those?
I was just gonna go there.
I
To
mean,
me, I would think anything in the backyard, like, this is okay, right? I mean, this is just for the facade of the house. I don't know.
Is it the front? Are we talking the sides or the back? It's kind of exactly where I was gonna go, which is, we just talked, are you talking the roof too? Like Lisa brought up, if someone wants to do solar panels on their side and the other person doesn't want to, is that okay? Or how far are we going? A pool on one side and out on the other.
And I think, David, the thing that hopefully makes sense is it's got to be visible to the public, because we're really trying to make it look nice, I'll say, from the street.
Okay.
If someone puts a garden in the back, that's fine. But to Bob's point, that's a really important point, because we do comment on some of the, I'll call it street trees or front yard landscaping. And I'd ask the question, I'm sitting in a building right now where all of a sudden, all those trees that were mandated by code just got cut down in front of my building. There's like 10 trees missing. I don't know if anybody asked permission, or they just came and cut them down and said, well, we had permission to build them. We don't want them anymore, and we don't have to go through anything. So they literally cut them all down in front of me. So there were 10 trees here 2 weeks ago, and there's no trees now between this building and Main Street. And maybe it was permitted, maybe it wasn't, but I just was kind of in shock to see it because I come in the morning and all the trees were gone. And they were, nice flowering crabs in it, and they're all gone.
And
Harrier, what's the address out there?
318 Main Street.
Okay.
that would be shocking. I mean, we've done so little to replant our trees. We're trying so hard to bring some trees back that's.
They're all gone. I mean, I think that's what we're here for, right? To stop that from happening.
I would hope. I mean, it's really a guide, right? It's really to help show that
Sure.
things are important to us, not just you can do it once and then decide what you want to do later on and it won't matter.
Well, the thing is that once it goes to the planning board and becomes a special permit, it's no longer a guide, but a mandate.
Right. But that's the planners where we're just.
Once it's on the site plan, it has to,
And
they
to
have to
be
meet the
honest,
site plan.
and to be honest with you, no landlord is going to give a rip about cutting trees down after the fact. Okay, they don't pay attention to this stuff. They don't know what's going on. They could care less. They just see trees that are in the way and they take them out. Or they see trees that they feel dangerous it's dangerous to, guests of the building itself, and they take them out. They don't have the decision or the special permit in the back of their head all the time. Actually, it's not in their head at all. Okay, once they get the go ahead to go, they just think they've got free rein.
Or it is in their head and they choose to ignore it and get away with stuff because this guy owns land all over the state and him pleading ignorant would be impossible.
He does it all the time.
But I'm just saying that this guy would know. This isn't an, oh gee, I didn't know I put the trees in last week because I had to and I'm gonna cut them down next week because I can. You know? Anyway, but that's neither here. I didn't know. I just looked outside and they were all gone. It was kind of amazing.
We do have a standard condition that I mean, of course I'm new, but I plan on putting in every single decision that says that if there is the removal of any of the landscaping, then they are required to replace the landscaping within the next growing season. So if in the middle of the winter, they cut down the trees, the expectation is that during the next growing season, which would be from the spring to the fall, they would replant the trees. So, you know, that will be in the special permit going forward.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and the language that we put in the last two that were just approved at the last meeting is that it would be in perpetuity that they would have to maintain the landscaping.
Actually, that's an interesting thing about the in perpetuity, because we've gone back and forth about that for years. And I was told by Kathy Jubert that no, it's actually in the main bylaws and that those apply. And yet the perpetuity seems to be a questionable thing. If it isn't written, does it apply? Is it, you know, is it something that's a standard that we've already put in place? Or
It's a standard that's been in the book for a long time, you know, and when the special permit granting authority issues a special permit, they reference a site plan or a landscape plan or a set of plans and maps, and those become what's required to be maintained.
So, but does it have to be also written for that to happen?
In the decision, no, because it's already in the code.
I like to add conditions that, because of course, you know, Bob and I live in the zoning bylaws. So we know the zoning bylaws, well, not me, not yet, Bob certainly, but we're spending much more time in the zoning bylaws than the average Joe Schmo. So the average Joe Schmo doesn't know that that landscaping provision is in the zoning bylaws. So that's why I choose to add certain things into the decision so that they are looking at this decision. They're not looking at the zoning. And so they will see it right there. So it just kind of underscores something that is already required.
Why we had issues, Lisa, you were in on this too, in the past, we've had issues where we've had places that were done a couple of years past, and then we've had problems enforcing, you know, like plants were removed or they didn't put them in or whatever. And we were never able to enforce that it was done correctly, or things died and never got replaced, or, that wasn't done correctly. I mean, obviously we have the one place that can't get any tenants in the lower level. That was one of them. And, you know, at least that you had some, you know, they weren't allowed to move in the lower level, but there's some other properties like that too, where, you know, it's still not resolved and no one was able to enforce anything.
How do you enforce it? Are there fines?
I would think so.
If it's a zoning code, and again, when you issue a special permit, that becomes part of the zoning code for that particular piece of property. So,
Right,
so there are fines because it's a zoning violation.
Okay, yeah, so if they don't put the trees up after you tell them to put the trees up and they have so much time, then you fine them every so often X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, so that there is some teeth there somewhere, and I didn't know that. I was just curious because they could just tell you to go pound salt. And I think to Lori's point, when you say in perpetuity, I think that's really important because I can build what you want today and tell the contractor, stay on board, we're gonna get our CO and then we can move the driveway where we want it because now it doesn't matter. We'll get those trees out of the way and then we'll live happily ever after, you know, so that's what we're trying to prevent too.
Yeah, and I like that, Laurie. I like what you're doing. I think it's a great idea. And it's a quicker reference too, than to have to go through all the pages and say, okay, on page 54 of the zoning book, blah, blah, blah. So I think you're doing a great job. Thanks.
Okay, good. All right, so can we move on from this section? So do we agree that the best way to approach this is as a condition of approval in the special permit decision? So if there's a major modification to the structure that is highly visible from the roadway, then they would have to go back to the planning board for approval. And by nature of the going back to the planning board, I would imagine that would include the design review committee, or do you want me to spell that out?
Probably would have to be spelled out.
Okay.
And could you also just put one more bullet in, like to Dario's point about removal? Like,
Well, I think what I would do to the bullets, Lisa, is simply installing or removing an addition, adding additional wooden windows or subtracting, installing or removing a porch, you know, because then we're giving the examples, because to me, it's worse to remove than it is to install in most cases, but enclosing a porch or deck or removing, you know, a deck, because if that was one of the decorative elements on the front and they decide they don't want it, you know, enlarging an existing, the one that says removing an entry is the last one, which is perfect, but you know, enlarging or reducing an existing entry, because they'll just say, oh, we're not making it any bigger, we're making it smaller, and that's not covered.
yeah, no, I agree totally with that.
So I think the word modify is perfect, because that goes both ways, and that's in the big red up front, because modify is just that. Change or modify is really what we're looking at, whether it's an addition or a change or a subtraction. It's still a modification. Those words I think are important, because you don't want to get stuck, you know, by some idiot on a technicality. That stuff just gets ugly.
So we're going to add that in the
Or
bullet.
somehow cover that. I mean, and maybe Lori could come up with a more efficient way of doing it, but you understand the intent, Lori.
I do.
And hopefully you agree with that, like subtracting is just as bad as adding.
No, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I will kind of rework that. Obviously, the decision is rendered by the planning board, so the planning board would have to be okay with the inclusion of this condition of approval when we do duplex decisions. So, but I think this is all good. So I'll kind of draft it up, I'll email it to everybody. We do actually have a duplex that's currently before the planning board. So if that project is approved, then this would be a perfect example of moving this condition forward. So very good. All right, so now I'm going to jump ahead. You'll see in that I moved the various sections around because, well, we had talked about that at the last meeting, having kind of more of the like items together. So that's what I did. Let me see. I had a little note. Building height is where we left off last time. So I did not have any additional changes here. Is everybody okay with the language under building height?
Yeah, I think so. And you had my document originally, so I think the changes I added, like, or called out would be part of this going forward. I don't know.
Yeah, we had talked about the, you had made some comments, so I got the old document that we had discussed on the 14th open as well on my desk. And there was a lot of back and forth between you and me on the pictures.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I guess originally I'd gone through all the two family and I had made comments. But I can go back and double check, but they're probably included. Like, I just wanted them for discussion. I just can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but I'll go back and check.
Yeah,
And
the
we've
only
got-
thing that I saw on the 14th version was, let's see. You had said the pictures on the original document were confusing. I like the discouraged one, and they both look like they would be bigger than a small cape. I can try to find a picture of a smaller duplex that would fit. Maybe just talk about the size, but no picture.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Hey, Bob, we have an actual height limit in feet somewhere. Is it like 35 feet or something?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
that's in
Yes.
the dimensional requirements.
Yeah, we do have a height requirement or limitation. It varies by zoning district, I believe.
Okay,
And I did see that put back on the chart that we'd asked. That looks, I think that looks good because it's on the end of the chart. Thanks.
Yes, that looks great.
All right, so then we move on to garage placement and design. And the only change was changing the word the to than as of the 14th meeting. And then you had a question, Mark. Amy, I think it was you, about a balcony that extends out over the garage and includes columns. So you put a question mark there, but there was nothing else. So I'm not exactly sure.
I guess I didn't know what it was. I was just wondering what a balcony over a garage with columns would be. I guess we don't see that much here. At least I
Yeah,
don't.
I have seen it a couple of times. So somebody might have like French doors out to like a little balcony.
yeah, they have widow walks and things like that, you know, they're usually colonial. They're usually like white vertical handrails with nice newel posts on the corners. And there's a deck, you know, it's a flat roof. But
Yeah,
I've seen it, you know, and they look nice because then all of a sudden the roof doesn't look like a roof.
yeah. Okay, that was probably just what I was thinking.
All right, then there was down here, the desire, I think this was you. This language I actually really liked.
Okay,
That you had eliminated. So I'm pretty sure on the clean copy, I kept it in. So what that means is that it looks, so they have the garage on the side of the building, kind of like 87 Hudson that is before the planning board now. So from the street, it doesn't look like a garage, which I'm super excited about because garages to me are the ugliest part of any sort of residential structure. So any movement of the garage doors to the side of the building makes it look like the garage is actually living space. So you can't see it from the front of the building. So it just looks like it's part of the house and that they don't have a garage.
I totally agree with that. I think there was a picture there that Judy had where the garages were in front of the building. They weren't to the side. So they were like popped out on front and the doors faced the outside. They faced the side. So maybe it was a picture that threw me off. I was picturing a house where they were still putting the garages on the front, but not how you're describing on the side. They were actually like in front of the house. And then the doors were facing the side. So it was like, I guess that's what I was picturing. But the way you're describing it now makes sense because that's how we always wanted it on the side. I was picturing a different thing. I think one of the pictures was kind of funny, but now that the
And I
picture's
think the
gone,
key here, Amy, and what Lori's saying, they can be proud of the front elevation as long as the doors are on the side.
Yeah,
That's the whole point. We don't want the garage doors right there on the street facing us. So I think the structure can come forward as long as the entry is from the side. We don't see the doors. I think that's what we're trying to stop.
I was picturing the garage just on the front of the house, kind of like how you do a front porch, like where it would be the house, the garage, and then the doors facing sideways. I had this weird vision, but it makes sense now the way you're saying it. So you can take off the cross out.
Can I just add a little question on the line that says a garage door color other than white that matches or complements? There's a lot of white garage doors that go with the white trim with a lot of these duplexes. Would it just be better to just go with a garage door color that matches and remove the other than white?
I think other than white is, I think a white garage door is great on a Colonial with all the white trim and everything else. It actually looks nice.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like, you know, we don't want to choose color, but we're saying other than white. So
I think we're trying to be politically correct here. That's what's going on.
so would it,
Okay, yeah, I can eliminate that little phrase, no problem. All right. So is everybody happy with the garage section with those two changes? Yeah. All right, and then we move on to landscaping. So I, of course, had moved this. It was originally in a different location. So I'm going to open the old version so I can remember the changes that we had talked about. Here we are. So I had added, actually, we probably already talked about this section because it was originally much further up in the document. So then the notable thing that I think we talked about last time is adding the word lawn to this second paragraph right here. And then also providing the intervals for street tree placement and location. And I think I mentioned last time that I got this from the National Grid standards for street tree, or their guidelines, I should say, for street tree placement if there are overhead wires.
Sounds good to me. One change that I might do is in the second sentence, it says later in these guidelines, but now it's not later anymore because this is at the end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe just delete the whole thing there.
My only
Yeah.
comment about the National Grid thing here is, when you read this, this is for 50-foot intervals, et cetera. That's for a really large scale property. I guess it's okay, but most of these are not going to be a large scale property, I'm assuming.
Well, the average frontage, I believe, is, or the smallest frontage, except for when you have one of those oversized lots where you only have 50 feet of frontage and then you have 4 acres. Other than that, the minimum frontage is 100 feet, if I remember correctly. Is
Yep,
that right?
that's right.
Yeah, so that means if you have a property with 100 feet of frontage, you get 2 street trees. And, you know, I was talking to a developer yesterday about street tree placement. Generally, what I advise, of course, we have to put some sort of standard up there, but it isn't really 50 feet. It's kind of, okay, well, you figure out where the driveway is. If you have a driveway in the way, then obviously it's not going to be 50 feet. It might be, 35 feet or so. And also generally people don't like you to put the street trees right in front of their picture window. So you might have to move it over. So this is just kind of a guide
No, I
which
understand
tells
that.
people that if you have 100 feet of frontage, you do 2 street trees. If you have 150 feet of frontage, you do 3 street trees. And then the location of those trees is kind of dependent upon the design of the particular duplex and the placement of driveways, et cetera. So common sense is applied to this standard.
So I'll butt in for 2 seconds on this. One thing which is completely insane that I've seen in the past. Where were we? I think it was in Wyoming. They had the 50 tree interval, they had the 100-foot lot, and the lawyer said, I put it right in the middle, I comply with a single tree. So they changed it to 51 or 49, which then 49 feet on 100-foot frontage, then you have to put in 2 trees. You can't play lawyer and say, hey, I'm 50, it's not my property on either direction, so I comply with the code. It was just a weird, and he won. And then they changed the bylaws. And another one is, when we say 50 feet, to David's point, 50 feet is great for development with 2,000 feet of frontage. It should be, I think it should be, no less than 50 feet. So to your point, Lori, if there's a driveway in the way, they're not measuring exactly 50 feet from tree to tree. We're just saying you have to have it be 50 feet or less for the tree, so you can put them where it makes sense. Unless we were trying to create a super city like Crystal Park, where every single tree in the town was at 50-foot increments, and that dictated where the driveways went. So I don't think we're trying to do that.
No.
I think we're trying to just get a couple trees up front. So if there's a couple trees up front, it should be no more than, no less than 50 feet, right? Because you want them to be closer. So you say it's less than 50 feet, or if you want to stop the lawyer in Wyoming, you could say 49 feet, so that someone says, gee, at a 100-foot lot, 1 tree in the middle, that meets code, Whatever you guys want to do, I'm just throwing out my 2 cents on all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I can change that wording. Of course, if it's no less than 50 feet intervals, then that could mean
50 feet or less, you could say.
Yeah, because the important thing is we want to have 2 trees with
Exactly.
100 feet of frontage. So shall be planted along the property frontage at how
No
about I
less-
say approximately 50-foot intervals? How's that?
Or no less than 50 feet. I think that's fine.
Well, then I'm concerned that they're gonna be like, okay, well, you get 1 tree then.
Let's do the 45.
I mean,
How about
I'm sorry, no
45?
greater. I'm sorry, I meant no greater than 50 feet. Duh.
Okay.
I'm
no
sorry.
more
Yeah. I'm,
Okay,
If you want to go to like Dario said, and Amy just brought up, do it the 49.
that's up to you guys. I couldn't believe that happened, that some weasel just like went on a stupid technicality. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen, but I just sat there and just walked out and said, all right.
Or even
Like-
45 feet, just to play it safe,
Well, I don't, anyway, I just brought that up. I'm not even saying to change it. Hopefully we won't have a lawyer that is that evil, but I'm pointing out that I've seen it before. That's all I'm doing. So 50
Okay.
feet or, no more than 50 feet. I think no more than 50 feet doesn't say equal to, so then it implies less than 50 feet.
yes, that is my interpretation.
Yeah, so that would be good, because no more than 50 feet. So if he says it's 50 feet, say, no, we said no more than 50 feet. We didn't say 50 feet or less. All right, anyway, sorry about that. I just,
No, I think it's,
Okay, so I made that change. I'm gonna
I think that's
highlight
great.
it so I don't forget. And that's pretty much it.
Do we want something about the driveway setback? Remember we talked about it. I know maybe that will be a bylaw for this year, but we had talked about it with the last duplex, how it goes, they all go right up to the line, and then there's no room for landscaping or fencing, or you have to push the snow on the neighbor's yard. It's like,
That was my markup, Amy, on the minutes, because apparently that was in the minutes somewhere, but I think we have to be real careful on how we state that in the minutes, because I thought we went over that. And when you find where it is, Lori, then I'll opine on my comments on the minutes.
Well, we have this section on page 3 where we're talking about driveways.
Right.
So maybe we just add something there.
Well, in the minutes, it said, Ms. Paretsky wanted to make sure they remembered to address driveway setbacks for next year's town meeting. Ms. Connors believes 5 feet would work. That was in the minutes. And if this is the spot to add it, I was just gonna clarify that, because I thought I did when we discussed this. So if we were to write something like that, the way it's usually written is we don't use the word driveways. We say on the side yard setback, there shall be no impervious surfaces within 5 feet of the property line. Because then they'll say, oh no, that's the sidewalk I use next to my drive. Oh no, that's where I park my car. That's a parking space, my driveway. So if you just say impervious, David, I'm sure you've seen this a million times. Impervious is impervious. So that just means it will be green of some nature, 5 feet on both sides, if that's our intent. But to limit it to driveways, you would undoubtedly get challenged with, this is where we park, this is where we walk, this is our basketball court. You'll get all that stuff that defeats the intent of the code.
I need to jump in just real quick on this. Couple of things. Currently for single-family homes, and I'll have to check for 2-family homes, but I know for sure that single-family homes do not require a paved driveway or parking area. Okay, I'll have to check and see if that also goes for a duplex. I'm not sure.
They don't require what, Bob?
Do not require a paved or concrete surface for parking or driveway
That's fine, yeah.
on a single-family residence.
Yep.
All right,
That's
so-
not, yeah, that doesn't conflict with this. We're just saying
Okay.
no impervious on the ends.
Okay, the other thing to keep in mind is that in a lot of sections in town where you can have a reduced frontage down to 50 feet, just whatever side widths you come up with, make sure that you're able to get within that 50 feet, you know, your new setbacks for the driveway at the front edge. And the driveway, and how far back from the street is that going to have to be maintained? Because sometimes they will have one of these 50-foot right-of-ways on their lot on reduced frontages, and that driveway will really snake within that 50 feet. Okay, that 50-foot width. So if you're going to have the restriction, you know, you probably, you know, if say it's 5 feet. You know, you need 5 feet on either side of a driveway, minimum required setback for a distance of 30 feet from the street line. I don't know, whatever you guys want to come up with, but just keep that in mind, that we have narrow driveway, narrow frontage allowances that are down to 50 feet.
Yeah.
When we were in Millbury, we had a zoning provision that said that within the front yard setback, there shall be no driveway within 10 feet of the side property line.
Right.
So what that would enable you to do, so say you have a 30-foot front setback. So within that front setback, you have to be 5 feet off, but if you have a side entry garage, it would enable you to go very close to, so even closer to the property line in order to make the swing into the side entry garage. So that would be helpful, I would imagine, in those circumstances where you only have 50-foot width. And say you have a wetland or a stream that is
Yeah, and that's up to you
in the
guys.
way.
Most of these guys continue the impervious the whole side of the site, but if you want to be able to pave right up to the property line, it's a little tough on the next door neighbor, because if I want to plant trees on my property line, then those branches are going to extend over into his driveway, and he's going to shovel snow onto my land, and that just gets kind of weird. But that's I think the design review committee, that's probably more planning and zoning than it is us.
And I was thinking the 5 feet the whole way up too, because then it wouldn't have helped where you needed the fence where the lights were shining on the neighbor, because if it was just down by the street,
Right.
it might not do what we wanted it to do.
What are your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, because now let me just jump back for 2 seconds. You just talking wetlands. How does that play into? Because if you're within a 50-foot wetland buffer, you can't do that in a
Right.
certain site. So that would knock that out completely, right?
Well, no, I was thinking, sometimes the placement of a home depends upon what the physical conditions of the parcel are. So say you have a 4-acre parcel, there could be a circumstance where even though you have a giant parcel, you're limited as to the house placement because of conditions. So it could be wetlands, it could be a stream, it could be ledge outcroppings, it could be topography, it could be all sorts of different things. And in a circumstance where you're tight, if you don't provide any leeway, then you are discouraging a side entry garage.
100%. Then you have to change that side entry garage. There's no 2 ways about it. Or you have to recite where that house is going.
Or you have to make the house a little bit smaller. And as we're seeing, these duplexes are getting grander and grander.
I agree with you completely.
So that, I mean, 87 Hudson is already, they talked about, well, the owner owns the land next door that the fence we asked to be put up and it won't matter. That's already under agreement right now. So
Mhm.
own that house anymore. So I think you're right to consider that, we have to mass it correctly. We have to make it smaller if in fact we're that close.
And Lori, I also think if there's a crazy exception, that's what variances are for. You could say, geez, I got 5 acres. This is really messed up. Can you help me? And someone's going to look at it, and hopefully people with common sense would say, okay, that's the exception to the rule. But the 0-yard impervious is going away unless you're, in downtown Boston, where you are building property line to property line, or in a big city. But when you're doing residential, nobody wants a driveway or a parking or a parking lot or a basketball court right up to their property line for the next door neighbor. I mean, it's brutal to have that, in a residential neighborhood. I don't think it's brutal downtown.
I agree with you, Dario. And even, case in point, I met with a client yesterday who just moved from the city out to the burbs in Sherburne. And they're like, wow, this is amazing out here. We're so used to living in a cramped quarter, and we're in Sherburne and we have all this space, and they're loving it. And now if all of a sudden they had a neighbor who's turning their car and shoveling their snow onto their property, they'd go bananas. It just would not sit well with them. So I completely agree, having a whole thought of a car backing out onto someone's, their property, no.
And I will say in Worcester now, we're working on, 4 different apartment complexes, downtown Worcester.
Yeah.
They all have 5-foot impervious setbacks. And that's in downtown Worcester, which is 10 times bigger than us.
Yep.
So I'll just eliminate the front yard setback.
Does that make sense? I mean,
what's on the screen there. There shall be no impervious surfaces within 5 feet of the side property line.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
All righty. Let me actually highlight this so I remember. And how about any of the other portions? Do you wanna, I'm gonna highlight this. Any other changes that folks want to make to the document?
I have a couple of things. So first off, to add to it, are we going to put the checklist on it that we had originally had that goes down, kind of that, when somebody comes and takes the guidelines with them in the back page, there was a checklist of different things that were going to be asked for and highlighted. So it was like a quick reference.
I'm happy to include a checklist. I don't think I've seen it though.
It's on the back page of the original design review.
Oh, okay.
There's a checklist.
I started one as well, so I can send that to you.
So this document,
Yep.
okay.
I think there's a checklist in there.
Okay,
That's
and
it.
so let's, on that checklist, I don't know who reviews it. We should be really, really careful that if I go through that checklist and I put a check mark on every single thing, then I will get my permit. And I'm only saying that because as recently as 2 weeks ago, we submitted in Wellesley to the ZBA. There's a checklist with 37 things on it. We did everything on the checklist. And then they said, where's your construction management plan? And a construction management plan has to do with, washing off the wheels of the tires so they don't bring dirt into the street, fencing off the building area. And we're sitting there saying, well, gee, we didn't know we needed one, and there's a month's delay.
Yep.
And we did everything we could possibly do, went by the letter of the law, and there's this hidden, what about this? And we literally lost a month, which cost the client, it's a private school, it could be a whole semester delay in the occupancy of a school because they gave us a checklist and then asked for something that wasn't on the checklist. So I'm not saying to not put the checklist. I think checklists are wonderful because it makes my job easy, but you can't leave something off that someone else is going to enforce because it's just so unfair to the person trying to just do the right thing.
I agree 1000% with that. I had a similar situation 5 years ago in Grafton with a pool that we were doing drove me nuts. I agree, hands down.
It's just unfair, and hopefully you guys get the intent. All I'm trying to do is we don't want a gotcha hidden there, because then we're evil as far as I'm concerned. So I just want to make sure that the checklist, includes everything that's needed, and it's thorough, that's all. And I think a checklist is the best way to do it because 99% of the people, they don't know the rules. They want to abide by them. You lay them out super simple. You go through it. You check everything off. Everybody goes, we have big meetings. We're ready to submit. We submit. And they say, where's your CMP?
Do you want me to pull up the checklist? I can share the screen.
This checklist that we have, I have it in front of me, you'd have to make alterations, but you also put a caveat in there that says, this is a guide for you to have these things for our presentation. But
I don't want to cover our tail, Lisa. I want to do it right. I really don't want. I don't want to sneak attack anybody. I think it's so important to try to make everybody's life easy, and then we go through the checklist. If we're going to have it, I would rather be thorough than find out it's 79% of it, and then we're bugging Bob, and we're calling the planning board. Is there anything? Oh yeah, well we have these 3 things. Well, zoning has these 2 things. Well, overlay district has these 2 things. That's a nightmare for people.
Well, I did actually prepare a checklist for the planning board for site plan review. And, I use that in order to go through applications when they're filed with the planning board. But of course, this is design review, so folks come to design review before they have everything good to go for the planning board.
Right, and I
So the
think,
planning board requires above and beyond what's here.
one of the checklists here would be, go to the planning review board checklist and you have to do all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we did just upload that checklist online for site plan review. And of course, I'm in the process of creating checklists for the other approval processes. I know, just from past practice, occasionally the planning board will ask for things that are not required, but I have no control over that. They're not like referenced in the zoning bylaws or in the rules and regs. The planning board may say, well, because of this particular use, we want something extra. And it's impossible to foresee what the planning board is going to want for that particular use.
Well,
Those circumstances may come up, even though we have a checklist that identifies everything that's required according to the rules and regs and the zoning bylaws. So I hear you, as somebody who, works with the development community, I hear how frustrating that can be. But of course, as staff, there's nothing I can do about it. If the planning board wants to nab you for something.
yeah, and I think if there's an exception to the rule, Lori, that's fine, because that's life. But typically, we advise the clients to sit for an informal meeting with the planning board to find out if there is anything. We know the checklist is a fact. But I mean, and we're setting up appointment now for a high rise we're doing in Boston. We're gonna sit with the building inspector and say, this is what we're looking to do. Is there anything here that's glaring that you see that doesn't make, and he's not held responsible. Well, you looked at it, it's your fault, but he may find some stuff that's kind of new or ambiguous and say, just make sure you do this. People are, and I think that's part of a normal developer's due diligence. But in the case of Wellesley, when I dug into it, the lawyer that represented the school had done 4 CMPs. The school had done 2 CMPs, and we were blindsided. So it's a standard procedure that wasn't in the checklist. And that's something that we have to avoid. There's always exceptions to the rule in every case, but anything that we're going to ask for consistently, they should know ahead of time.
I totally agree. Absolutely.
I agree
And
too.
the
Being on the
checklists
planning board, it would be
are
good.
super helpful for me, but in my experience, usually the development community really appreciates the checklist because they go through it themselves. And so oftentimes when I get an application, I get my checklist and there's already X's. And so I just put my X's next to their X's. And so it works very well for everybody. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the checklist.
Okay, and all my point was, we should all look at this and make sure we're not missing something, that's all, because the poor person that looks out, and I think to your point too, Lori, part of the checklist is, remember when you go forward, you're gonna have to go through the planning board checklist, so then they can refer to the next checklist, because that's the next step. So you're not trying to cover everything, you're just saying, there's a planning board checklist, there's a ZBA checklist, this is our checklist, and then they can look through all that stuff, because if there's a showstopper there, we tell our client, we don't buy the land.
Yeah.
If there's something there that's broken, I want to know now, not 8 months from now, so I can go find another piece of land. And that's so fair to people. That to me is the right thing to do. You don't want to gotcha anybody. That's just wrong at all levels. So anyway, I'm yapping way too much about this because I do it for a living and we try to do the right thing. And that's all I tell the client. I said, you got to know the rules. You got to know the facts, which is your land, and then you got to know your goals. And the rules, you guys give us the rules when it comes to developing. We go through all that stuff. If we meet all the things on the checklist, then I tell them, buy the land. And then you get blindsided, and it's just awful.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
All right, and then the second thing I wanted to ask about on the architectural variety. In reading through what we have, I don't see where we put in anything about like a neighborhood of them. Like I know Wynn Avenue or Wynn Terrace in Northborough has got 5 duplexes in a circle around the circle. It's very nice. I had photographed one for sale and it sold within a day for 150 more than it was asking. It's amazing. But when I look at the wording on the architectural variety, and you're asking to have them different, how, I personally think when you have a neighborhood of them, that they should have some uniformity.
Actually, okay, you can see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so that had been crossed out, I think, on Amy's version, but I added it back in.
I
I
mean,
think the reason why I crossed it out is because we had a lot of duplexes that were side by side and they were exact. So I felt if we were saying you can't have duplexes side by side that are the same, then almost all of our duplexes in town wouldn't fit.
One of the pet peeves, and I think it's important to, these are guidelines, so they're not standards. And there was some language in there here. So it says, however, exceptions may be granted in special circumstances where similar architectural consistency provides a distinct character for a cluster of homes surrounding an open space or on a particular street.
That's good. I think that gives Lisa what she needs.
Yeah, because there are circumstances where that may be fine if you have 2 duplexes next to each other. If you have 30 duplexes, I think that having 30 identical duplexes is too much, in my opinion. That's like one of my pet peeves. It's I feel like I'm in a science fiction movie if I go into a neighborhood where they're all identical.
Yeah.
So this provides the flexibility. So you're saying that they should be different if you have like a neighborhood of them?
no.
However, you could have some similarities in special circumstances. So it kind of allows you both options.
Okay, because I mean, as I say, Wynn Terrace is a perfect example. It's beautiful. I mean, they have a center island that had a tree and all this landscaping, a beautiful rock with a commemorative plaque on it, actually. And I can send you some pictures of it. The plantings. There's
Lisa, don't you think this covers that? I mean, because it gives us the flexibility.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I like the flexibility. That's
Yeah, the however exception is right there, which I think is good, and that allows Wynn Terrace to work.
Is Wynn Terrace all the same or are they all different?
no, they're all the same.
The same.
Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful though. I mean,
And I think Lydia Way, those are all the same too.
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, it's one thing when you have 2 pieces together. They're duplexes. That's what they are. It's not like asking the old days where you had, five capes in a row and wheels in a row and stuff like that. Those are.
But I think this covers that, which is good, because it gives us the flexibility to say we don't want 30 of them in a row all looking the same because you're too cheap to do something different. Yet, if you come up with a cool way to create tiny neighborhoods with the same one, that's awesome. And that's
I would
what
probably take out prohibited then and use a word that's not as strong as prohibitive. Duplicate
discouraged.
house- Huh?
Discouraged.
Yeah. I think prohibited, at least like in a planning board mind, it would be like, okay, it's not allowed then. Anytime I see prohibited.
But there is an exception, but that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. Strongly discouraged.
Because when I read this, I'm like, almost every duplex I think of in our town, side by side is the same. So
And
I
if
felt
you-
like,
Side is the same, but I think this is more about like a duplex of 2 next to a duplex of 2, next to a duplex of 2. So like
Right.
the structures should have differences,
Yes,
even if the units within the structure are the same.
yep. Put a D at the end of discouraged.
Oh, yeah, you are right.
Do we have any of them in our town? I'm just curious, so I can think about. I'm not saying it's good or bad, and I agree with this. I'm fine with it. I'm just wondering, do we have any developments of like duplexes where they're actually different?
Well, I can't think of, well, obviously I don't know in the town. Bob probably knows best.
I really can't think of any.
I think so.
You know, the one-off duplex is obviously a one-off, but any kind of a duplex or even a triplex situation like a condo, they're all pretty much the same from one building to the next to the next. There isn't, I can't think of anything in town that you think that you're talking about.
So
Right,
Eastland Partners is a developer. They do large duplex communities. They have a community in Milford, and they also have one that's under construction in Millbury. And we had actually put as a condition of approval in the decision that there had to be a variety of architectural styles. And the same, I know when I was working in Groton, actually I stole the language from Groton's because of course I was there for a period of time. And they had it in their rules and regulations that if you had, this was actually in single family homes. So there had to be architectural differences between single family homes that had a visual relationship to each other. So that meant directly across the street, diagonally across the street, or next to each other. So you couldn't have the same architectural features, like they had to have some meaningful differences between them. So we actually put that into our decision for Clearview. And so that's an example, but they're just getting underway with the construction now. I think they have like maybe 6 duplexes currently under construction. So, but their Milford development has some of those differences between the various duplexes. So they have a website, so you could Google it. It's Eastland Partners. So they actually have different floor plans.
Are we okay with what we have here then?
Yep.
I just want to, because I gotta get going pretty soon, so I just, if there's,
Yeah.
I really want to try to get through this if we can.
All right, Lisa, did you have any other changes you wanted?
I don't think so. I think those are the ones when I looked at them, I just felt that, you know, it didn't take into consideration a neighborhood, like, because I do a lot of photography for these places to sell them. And I see a lot of different things that come about. So the ones that I did in Sterling is very much like what you say, that they're just in straight lines, and I mean, the color and everything looks the same. So visually from the street, it's nice, but together it's just a box, and you walk in a box. So yeah, I think so. I did make notes, and those are the notes that I wanted to talk about. So I think I'm all set.
I think too,
Anybody-
now that they're done, we can all go back and read them. I don't think there'll be any changes, but if someone catches something, you know, we can review the final. I know we have to add some pictures.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you folks about. Do you want to include pictures or do you not want to include pictures? Like I can make some suggestions for pictures. I know we had talked about using pictures, especially bad examples. Like maybe we should just have pictures of good examples so that we don't
Right.
offend anybody.
Or maybe one page at the end with a couple example pictures. I don't know.
Well, I think you have again, my work, but I think a few pictures are not a bad idea. I think depending on, which ones we pick. And if we go through town and see the styles, I mean, unfortunately, and you can all attest to it, that every era gives a different desirable styles. So these aren't going to be for this guideline book will probably change with those desires. And maybe we put things that are more current that work in Northborough, as opposed to what we'd had before when we were looking at it, when we got the first revision back, last year or the year before. So I think a few photos. I like how you've placed it. It looks great already. And maybe it can be put in a couple of spots, like even a landscaping picture, something that will bring your eye to the visual. So I don't know, I can submit a couple things to Lori. Lori can look at them, bring them back to the group, and everybody can say yeah or nay. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe Lori, and if anybody else has pictures, anybody want to send Lori a couple pictures? And Lori, you find places to put them in and we'll review it next time.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. And
And
Dario, you might, you're an architect, so you might have some designs that you think are particularly helpful.
Okay,
yep, anybody who has any pictures or ideas, we'll just send them off to Lori. Do you want to do the minutes really fast or do you want to do them next time?
I gotta jump, so if we can do them next time, or is that okay, or if you want me to?
Yep, and I didn't have any changes, so I don't know if anyone did.
well, mine already got implemented into this, so I don't have to change it. It had to do with not using the word driveway, using the word impervious. So we've already incorporated it, so I think we're fine.
Why don't we just go ahead then?
Okay, does anybody have any changes in the minutes?
I don't.
Nope.
Okay, I don't have them in front of me. Anyone want to make a motion? I don't remember the date.
Hold on a minute.
I make a motion to the minutes from 4/14/2022 be approved as written.
Second,
There, okay, roll call vote. Lisa Maselli? Aye. Dario Demar?
Aye.
Dave Varon?
I,
I'm an aye, so the minutes are approved.
yeah, look at that.
Okay, and then maybe we'll send out a copy of the check sheet too. So next month, we can talk about the check sheet and we can do the final look at the guidelines with the pictures.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
second.
Okay,
All right.
Dario?
But
We have to vote on it, I guess, too. Dario?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Dave?
I.
And I'm an